Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. And when a little story came across my desk about Donna McGeorge, I said, "Gee, I wish I had back the minutes I've wasted at meetings." And by golly, she has a 25-minute meeting, which we're going to hear a lot about. And she's calling in from Australia, and we're happy to have her. Donna McGeorge, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Don. Happy to be here.
No, well, Donna, first, tell us a little bit about your personal background, then your company, and a little bit about your book, and finally, your website and where people can get the book.
Okay, so it's hard to know where to start around tell a little bit about you. A lot of people ask me how I got into the productivity game and why do I write about such things. And I suspect it's because I had a dad who was in the military, he was in the Navy. And so as a family, we were always pretty punctual and organized and routine. And so I think that kind of just played out in my life. I've been running my own practice or business, if you will, for just on 20 years. And as I started out as a bit of a trainer for hire, and then got into writing and speaking more towards the last probably 5 to 10 years in my business. I'm located in a beautiful part of Australia. I'm in Queensland, which is this very, Queensland's, particularly the part that I'm in, really interesting mix of, say, Florida and California. So we have plenty of retirees gadding about in golf carts, and we have the kind of laid back, beautiful, pristine beaches kind of lifestyle that you get in California as well. So it's a gorgeous part of the world. And yeah, I've written 10 books overall, but the first few were rubbish because you've kind of got to write a few rubbish books before you get to the good ones. But the last 3 are pretty good. And you can get all of them at all the good online places, but particularly if you go to donnamcgeorge.com, you can grab copies of my books. So is that what you're after? Is that
that's a good point. Well, but now my question is, what is the main thrust of your current book, which is why you're here?
My most recent book is called The One Day Refund. And this is about how you basically we waste a lot of time doing lots of little things throughout the day. And if we were just a little tighter about how we did our work, everything from tighter about meetings, more structured in how we did our days, and we kind of chipped away some of the wastefulness, you can pull back the equivalent of nearly 8 hours in a week, which is why we called it the One Day Refund, where you can get back a day in your week, the equivalent of a day in your week. And it's not necessarily to goof off, to put your feet up, to, take a vacation. It's more about, staying on top of things and making sure that you're doing the right work and thinking strategically and thinking, thinking into the future, where a lot of business owners often are so swamped with everything that they're doing, they're not thinking about, what do I need to get done over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, quarter. And so it's a book about how you kind of take back some of that lost time to shift your activity horizon more into the future rather than playing catch-ups.
Well, let's go down that one for a little bit. What are 1 or 2 things that you say people should do to get some of that time back?
Yeah, well, a lot of our feelings of overwhelm and being out of control and at risk of failing at the important things is because we carry a lot of stuff in our heads. So one of my favorite quotes from an author called David Allen is that the human mind is for having ideas, not storing them. So one of the first things we do is we store a lot of stuff. We try to remember things, we hold things in our heads. And if any of your listeners are or viewers are female business owners, then they're probably holding even more, because a lot of the times, I don't mean to be overly sexist about it, but a lot of times women are holding the business down, but also remembering that it's grandma's birthday next week and little Johnny has to have this organized, ready to go to school and all that sort of stuff. And so my suggestion is you start every day, straight up start every day by emptying everything out of your head. And you do that by writing it down. So I do that every morning. I sit and I think what's on my mind. It's not tasks, it's the things I'm thinking about. Now, I may convert some of those things into tasks, but for the most part, I just got to get everything out of my head. And there's this weird feeling that you get by all of a sudden you feel like you've got bandwidth and you've got now I can think. Now I feel like I have space. And so that's probably the biggest one I would say. The next one I would say is that sometimes I think small businesses don't always follow big business processes. And what I mean by that is, big manufacturing processes like lean manufacturing and Kanban and all of that sort of stuff. We often think, oh, that's not for us. That's just for people who make cars and things. But actually, some of the techniques are really good. So after you've emptied your head, the next thing you want to do is set up yourself a small Kanban. Now, a Kanban, if you don't know, is basically it's columns of work, and column 1 says everything I need to get done. So that's huge. There's always lots of things in there. So that's to do. Column 2 is currently doing. And so there'll be 3 or 5 things in there. But the one that I think is a real kicker is things I've done. Because one thing I do know about motivation and feeling good and feeling like we're getting stuff done is when progress is visible. And so this is a really cool, I use this with technology. I've got it set up on my computer, but you can set it up on a wall, or you can, some of you might be able to see my cupboards in the background. It's perfect for Kanban. It's almost like it's got a whole bunch of columns ready to go, right?
Keep going.
Oh, keep going. What else? Oh, gosh. Okay. I would also talk about, now this comes back from my computer days. So long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was a network administrator. I looked after a small network of computers. And this is back in the 90s. That's just showing my age a bit, really. And one of the things we used to have to do, a program we'd have to run every now and then, was called a defrag. And a defrag, what would happen when computer data was stored on older computers, imagine a disk, a round disk, and it would just store data all over in different spots, right? Wherever it just found a spot, it would store it. And when you would run a defrag program, it would grab all that data and condense it into one spot on the disk, making all this free space become available, and your computer would run more efficiently. And so I think we need to defrag our lives a little bit and defrag our work, that we're often, email is a great example. If you open your email first thing in the morning and then you kind of just dip into your email all day, then it's kind of like you've fragmented your stuff. Whereas if you said, I only do email, I don't know, 9 in the morning, midday, and then later in the afternoon, or at the top of the hour for 5 minutes, and you compressed or batched your work, you're going to then leave all this space for what I refer to as adaptive capacity. Space to think, space to look for new opportunities, space to respond to change, dare I say pivot if the world goes a bit crazy again, right? What have you got to do to be able to survive if things change? And if you don't have that adaptive capacity or that space to think and process and strategize and plan, then you're probably just spinning your wheels a lot and just surviving. You want to do more?
Oh, no, yes. I told you, the more guests talk.
I could talk about this all day. You just put your hands up if you've got a question or you're ready to talk, because adaptive capacity is something that absolutely is very close to my heart, as many of us experienced over the last 2 years with the pandemic and the massive changes that brought about, and that's continuing to impact our work. And whether it's because we've now adapted or adopted more technological things, or however we've had to adapt around that. And the phrase that I'll often ask business owners and leaders is, are you too busy to work with? And so how you'll know that is if you look at your calendar and it's full of back-to-back meetings and you're just flat out busy the whole time and there's no gaps, and say, someone says to you, hey, it would be great if we could, get together and have a meeting, and you go, sure, and you look at your diary and you've got nothing for 6 to 8 weeks. You're too busy to work with, and you're too busy to take advantage of opportunities. So I protect, and you're experiencing this right now, Don, because it's Friday here in Australia as we're recording this, and I keep my Fridays free for opportunities, for new business, for new clients. So if a client rings me, brand new person rings me on a Tuesday, the last thing I want to be saying to them is, oh, I'm sorry, I can't have a meeting with you for another 6 weeks. I want to be able to say, sure, let's lock something in. And so I call it my adaptive capacity, and it's the space to take advantage of change and opportunities when they present themselves.
We're talking with Donna McGeorge. Donna, your books, and you can put them up there and let our audience see.
Okay, that's the latest one. Then there's this one. This is a good one. This is about how you structure your day according to the clock in your body rather than the clock on the wall. It's a good one. And then this one, very close to my heart, because I think it's a crying shame that people spend all day in meaningless back-to-back meetings and then have to do their real work when they get home, which means that they're not spending time on the things and people that they value most or that bring them joy. So they're the It's About Time series.
Okay, but let's talk about that 25-minute meeting. How do you get somebody to structure a meeting to 25 minutes, especially when it's his time or her time to shine?
Right. So if someone else has booked the meeting, it's probably a bit rude to then say, hey, let's do a 25-minute meeting and I'll run it. That's probably not the way I would suggest anyone would do it, but certainly I've been experimenting with this for a number of years. And I think, so lots of people book 1-hour meetings with me. And I'll try to push back. I'll often say, look, can we do it in 30 minutes? Because, there's this default setting of 60 minutes. So I'll often ask. But the polite way to do it is someone books a meeting with you, and the polite way to go back is say, yep, sure, happy to meet at that time. But can I just ask, what politely and nicely and, and respectfully, what's the purpose of the meeting? So, at the end of this meeting, what do you hope will have happened? So we're asking there for outcomes. And so anytime I book a meeting, I will always put that in. By the end of this meeting, it would be great if we've made a decision, we've learned some things, we've made a plan, we've agreed a budget, whatever that might be. And then the second question I would ask is, and what do you need me to prepare? What do you need? What role do you want me to play in this meeting? And so if someone books a meeting with me and I can't see that and I'm not really sure why, I'll go back with a tentative acceptance and say, yep, happy to. Can you just answer a couple of questions for me? Now, one of two things will happen. Either they'll write back and say, actually, I'm not sure we need you. Yay. Or they'll write back with answers, in which case it'll be a much more effective meeting. Now, if you haven't got time, maybe you find yourself in the meeting and you're like, what was I, why am I here? What's this about? I think it's perfectly okay to, no matter who is leading the meeting, just to say, hey, can I just ask a couple of quick questions? First of all, at the end of this meeting, what do we hope will have happened? What's our outcome for today? And hopefully the chair will answer that. And I think it's okay to lead a meeting that you've been invited to, provided you don't announce it. So I never encourage someone to say, excuse me, everyone, I will now lead this meeting and facilitate it, because clearly we haven't got a plan here. That's a career limiting move if ever I saw one. But it is okay to say, do you mind if I just ask a couple of questions? And a couple of questions like, what's the outcome we're looking for today? And what do you need from us today? And what do you think is the best way that we can do that? Or, do you mind, before we dive into this, do you mind if I could just do a quick whip around, 1 minute each, just bring you up to speed on your position on whatever the topic is, just 1 minute each, and then pay attention to what the things are. Sounds to me like we've got a lot of blockages with finance. So how about we talk about finance? So So just a couple of things where if there's no one driving the bus, as in how are we leading this meeting, someone has to jump into that seat, and it can be you. Just don't announce it. You just very politely, respectfully, hey, can I ask a couple of questions? And that'll make the meeting, irrespective of whether it's 25 minutes or not, it'll at least make it a more effective experience.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but the meetings are sometimes called so the meeting person who called the meeting can demonstrate how he or she is in control. How do you deal with? Well, I don't know if that is part of what your brief is about, but to me, most youth meetings that are useless are because the agenda of the person who called is different than the agenda of all the people that were invited to the meeting.
Well, first of all, I think agenda, purpose trumps agenda is my view of things, right? And so what that tells me is either there was none, right? So no one sent out a note saying here's the agenda or here's the purpose or whatever. I think, there's power relationships, right? We see it all the time. Like I watch with great delight. We're about to go through an election here in Australia, and I watch with great delight as a journalist will ask a politician a question, and they never answer the question. They speak to their own agenda, right? So
you have a series in Australia about this bureaucrat and his staff, and I've been trying to remember the name of it. It ran for 3 years, so and he was the planning, and he would get into. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. I'm hoping
I know the one you're talking about, and I can't remember it either. It was run on our ABC here, and it was a parody on a government office and the politicians, etc. Yeah.
And what resonated here in America was that someone would call a meeting, and then they'd go around the room, and at the end they never agreed to anything. And to me, the purpose of a meeting is to agree to get everybody focused on getting things done. But that's
absolutely, and that's why I think the purpose becomes really important. So we can't control the behavior of someone else. So if my manager, if my boss, if that's how they are, I can't always control how they show up, but I can control my response and my reaction to it. And so I'm going to say, don't worry about how others call meetings for the moment. I want you to focus every meeting from now on and for the rest of your life that you call, that you chair, that you are in some measure of control in. I want you to have purpose in. And it's literally just, you finish this sentence, by the end of this meeting, it would be great if, 2 or 3 bullet points. That's it. Then I want you to put, one of the things that, particularly with virtual meetings, one of the things that happens is people often show up. It happens more virtually than it does in real life, but it happens in real life as well. They show up, unless you tell them what you want them to do, they just assume they're a passive observer. And so if you want people to show up and contribute something, you got to tell them. So you'll say, by the end of this meeting, it would be great if. What I need from you is to come prepared to answer these questions, or prepared to give your point of view on, and you will be called upon to give your point of view on. And then you might say, and please find attached the paper, the slide deck, a video or something, so that you give people a chance to be prepared as they come in. Because too often what happens is people just say, we're having a meeting about Project X, and everyone just rocks up. Now, what specifically? Is it about budget? Is it about next steps? Is it about the plan? Is it about the client? What's it specifically about? And so whilst you may not be able to control everyone else, and that's interesting, Don, so when I wrote this book and I was doing a lot of the press around it, I was asked a lot about how do you change the culture of meetings in an organisation? And I went, I don't really care. I said, I'm interested in, an individual being able to just do their day better and what they can control. Because I can't control culture. I can't control leaders. I can't control the person that comes in the meeting and just wants to pontificate on whatever their topic is for the day, right? I can't control that. But I can control at least the meetings I do. that they're going to be really good, they're going to be on point, and people are going to be able to get the best out of them.
Well, you brought up the point I was going to bring. In meetings, when you're in an association or et cetera, there's always one or two people that tend to dominate the conversation, especially now that with Zoom. How do you get them? How do you shut them up?
Well, in Zoom, it's easy. You could always mute them, but that would be a bit rude, I would think. I mean, you know, in the old days when we used to do all the face-to-face, now I wish I had a mute button for some people. So that's probably the most abrupt way. And I have seen that done a couple of times where someone's muted them and said, look, I'm really sorry, I've had to mute Bob because we really need to move on. Bob will take that offline. You got to have a really good relationship with someone to do something like that.
Yes.
Very good relationship. Now, I would say it's about how you set it up. So the structure that I recommend for most meetings is one called Scan, Focus, Act. And Scan is where we do ask about what's going on, try to get some context, let's get the perspective. And the reason you get someone that does talk a lot and overtake is because you haven't got a solid and strong process in place. And so when you say to people up front, okay, we're just going to go around everyone. I'm going to ask everyone now just to give me a quick update, 1 minute each. And I'm going to, you know, maybe I haven't got, where's my phone? Haven't got it nearby. That's very practical of me. And so I'm going to hold up my phone and say, I'm going to have a timer on for 1 minute each. And everyone's just going to give a 1 minute update. And so when the person who's talking too much goes over their minute, you say, you interrupt, you literally do something like this, or you say, whoa, hang on a second. Because the interesting thing about Zooms or Teams, whatever your online method is, when one person speaks, it cuts over the other person. So it's quite easy to interrupt that because there can only be one voice at a time, typically with a Zoom. That's just how it works. So you say, we're going to do 1 minute each. Then you might do a visual that says, hey, time, or you might even agree up front. I'm going to use the reactions. And so if you're using Zoom, you're going to say at the 1 minute point, I'm going to, put the thumbs up sign that says that we're now at the 1 minute point to stop you. So I think most people are reasonable. Now, maybe that's naive of me. I think if they understand the rules, they're likely to follow them. The reason someone talks a lot is because either no one else is speaking, or B, they're very passionate about the topic, or C, they're more senior, it could be that, or they just don't know what the rules are. And so when you say everyone gets 1 minute to start with, just so we get everyone to have a say, then we'll talk about the key issues and I'll call upon you. Please, everyone stay on mute. If you have something to say, stick your hand up or whatever. Just, I think a bit more directive up front will help your meeting down the track.
Unfortunately, we have to go on. Your books again and how people can get them?
So DonnaMcGeorge.com is probably the easiest way, and I've /shop, and you can get into my books.
Will you spell it out for our audience?
I will indeed. Donna McGeorge, DonnaMcGeorge, no spaces, .com.
Well, as we ask all our guests, what would you like to leave our audience with today?
I think probably the thing that I've found the most useful in the last few years with my business and with my world is I try to do something every day that my future self will thank me for. And so it's, it might be that it could be something as small as when I finish up my day, I tidy up my desk area so that when I come in the next day, it's all clean and good to go. My future self thanks me for leaving a tidy desk. Or it could be having a difficult conversation with someone that I know if I do it now, my life in future will be better. Or it could be at the end of the day, I stop and wrap up and maybe I'm a zero inbox person. Maybe I clean up my inbox so that I know the next day I'm coming in to just a fresh start. So my biggest tip for everyone is, what could you do today that your future self will thank you for?
That's a really great one. Donna McGeorge, we say thank you so much for a really interesting time.
Thanks for having me, Don. It was a pleasure.